literature and hypothesis, and also finalizing your problem statement. If you miss that now, you will not only miss very important writing aspect, but it will pile up, because once or the one sooner or later you will have to put up when you start writing your, what should I say, dissertation, or when you document your work. So it will be good you start writing now itself, so that brick by brick you will be building your hypothesis as well. It's a very important suggestion for you. If you do it, it will be good. So let us start. Let us learn something about the common variables in research. This is extremely important, because these variables you will be referring, cross-referring, talking about, and also using them to obtain what's called a lot of information and data points. Now let us see what is variable. The word variable, as the word itself connotes, is an entity that changes, that has a characteristic of changing every time and every moment, I should say. So it's a concept that takes different quantitative values. Today's my age is 66 years, but tomorrow it will not be 66 years, 5 months and 20 days. It will be 21 days, right? It is changed. Like that, anything that changes, plenty of things changes. Time changes, your weight changes, your possibly color, skin color also could change, and there will be a lot of subtle as well as gross changes happening. And variable is that kind of entity that always changes. Height, weight, income, age, so many things go on changing. It's an oligo truth. You see, it is an objective truth or objective happening that things will change. Time changes, the nature of a person changes. But what is important in variable is how much it changes in quantity. That is important. So when the concept is a change, how much changing in quantity becomes the measurable. So variable is always a measurable thing. There are certain variables you can't measure, but you can have a feel or a touch, that I will tell about that little later. There are subtle variables which we are convinced they are variables, but it is extremely tough, extremely difficult to actually measure. That is how many theoreticians like Einstein and all, they theorized without doing experiments, and they all became true when the experimentation became experimentation was possible. There are so many things in the world that are happenings which cannot be experimented, right? Extremely tough. For example, the relationship between the time and the space. How do you experiment it? Time itself, you can't experiment it, but we know there is time. There is an entity called time. So there are variables which do change, but extremely tough to measure. But there are always a convincing ways, indirect means, to have an idea, to learn about them too. So variable need not necessarily directly, quantifiable, but it is completely under the grip of quantification. It is possible. That is to be very well understood. So variable is an entity that changes, many times measurable, sometimes immeasurable. Right? So that is the concept of variable, and always we talk about variables only in research. We study variables only in research. We should recognize, cognize, and then sometimes document them. Now let us see major types of variables. The first and the foremost, very important, I should say, central abstract entity is called dependent variable. It is an outcome variable. When does an outcome come? An outcome comes when there is a process, when there is something manipulated. when does result come? When you study and appear for the examination, is it not? But the result will come. That result, or what is that causes to get that, is caused by, is called dependent variable. If one variable depends or is a consequence or a result of the other, it is termed dependent variable. In fact, the consequence is dependent, the result is dependent on some other entity. So there is individually dependent variable exists, but it is always dependent on some other thing. For example, your salary is dependent on your qualification, or the plant, for example, grows because of feeding water. The other entity here is the water, the result is the growth. So dependent variable is the growth. Please understand, it is very, very abstract. Growth depends on water. Now what is water? Water is called independent variable. So by the consequence or the result is growth. Growth was possible because of water. That is what research tells you. Research gave you a finding that water is necessary for the plant's growth, right? But then there are certain restrictions here. We have to singularly isolate that water, because there is not necessary that water is alone responsible for plant's growth. There will be so many other variables, but at this point in time, your objective is the effect of water on the growth. So this is where the prudence wisdom of the researcher comes. You will have to isolate, pull out that strand and then study the effect of that other variable on the growth, on a chosen variable that is called dependent variable. Now health, for example, is dependent on good food, right? If you take nutritious food, then you will have health. Health is a result, it is a consequence, it is a dependent variable on nutritious food. Now nutritious food can be again taken as a dependent variable. Nutrition is dependent on enrichment of vitamins. So then vitamins become independent and your food becomes dependent. So there is always a interchange of dependent and independent variable, and that is the reason why you should always delineate what you are going to get as a result out of what manipulation. That manipulation is called independent variable. Independent variable is always under the control of the researcher, but dependent is not. Your growth is not dependent on kind of water unless you manipulate the water quantity, right? And if you put, say, take two plants, for one plant you put 1 ml, for the other plant you put about 10 ml, the 10 ml water may be showing an effect of more growth than the 1 ml, is it not? So there is always a measurement, there is always a quantification, there is always a result on account of something, that something is called independent variable, and that something is always manipulable, always under the control of the investigator or the researcher, and observing the result is dependent variable. So please understand, these two things are very extremely important. Generally the result is abstract, result is not in the control of the investigator, whereas the independent variable is always under the control of investigator. The characteristic of independent variable is that we can change deliberately, purposefully, so that we will observe the differential or discrimination in the result. So these two variables, please make it very, very perfect as a conceptual idea in your minds, because many times you will have to talk on what is dependent variable, what you are studying at, by doing what, by manipulating what. If you delineate and record it, it will be more good and more apt and more scientific. So dependent variable is that result, consequence, outcome, whereas independent variable is the agent which gives that outcome or the reason for getting that outcome under the control of always investigator. So dependent and independent variables should be very clearly, ingrained in your minds. That is extremely important. Now there is a third kind. See, almost all other variables definitely, are having an inclination about these two variables. So if you learn these two variables very clearly without any shadow of doubt, then other variables become completely easy for you to understand. So what is the other variable? The other variable is called a confounding variable, right? Confounding variable is also existing because in nature you can't really, unless you control the experiment, in nature all the forces are acting together simultaneously. But if you want to study singular variable effect on some other the entity, we will have to differentially treat, right? So experimental conditions are possible in the laboratory, whereas in reality everything is happening. So it is necessary for us to understand the other than dependent and independent variable, and generally the confounding variable is that is not to be not you are studying, but has an effect, an indirect effect on the dependent variable. That is very, very, very. In other words, it is also called confusing variable. It confuses you. For example, if you take water and plant's growth is dependent, and water is independent. You are differentially adding to differential plants, many number of plants. Plant growth, as I told you, is not just solely dependent. That is your objective now, but water is the objective. So you feel you will only change the objective, that is the water amount, and seeing the growth. But at the same time, it is the soil, it is the light, it is the kind of fertilizer, it is. So all other things also are directly or indirectly dependent on the growth. So these variables which you have not considered, they are also acting on the growth. So in research, what is important is you will have to control these confounding variables. In other words, you will have to homogenize, you will have to, I should say, see that these confounding variables do not exert unnecessary influence on the dependent variable. If that is what, in other words, the philosophy of research is minimize the bias. Confounding variable is a bias because your choice is water and growth. So sunlight is a bias. Fertility factors of the soil is a bias. So you will have to keep them common, keep them same. That means if you are studying one case and one control, water, the plant you are not adding water, the plant you are adding water, the treatment should be, or the soil should be same, this seed that you choose should be same, keep all the other variables same and only change the select variable which is independent variable, that is water, because your intention is to see the effect of water on the growth. We should be very cognizant of the confounding variables. Confounding variables, we should be very careful, see them, cognize them, realize them, be very careful. They will have minimal or no effect on the outcome result. That is what is called confounding variable. So those aspects of your study or sample that might influence the dependent variable, that is result or outcome, and whose effect may be confused with the effects of the independent variable. So it is not just delineating dependent and independent variable. You should be cognizant, you should be very aware of so many, that will be infinite number of other variables, either subtly or grossly having a direct or indirect effect on the dependent variable, but please be aware of them. If possible, minimize them. If possible, eliminate them, so that the outcome becomes prominent. Outcome becomes, because of the independent variable, the outcome has come, you can very confidently say. So confounding variable, you should be very careful about. It is called confusing variable. The other type, which is very common in social research, especially social research, is what is called intervening variable. Very hard to observe, but that is always present. Very hard to observe, it is always present. Even though you delineate dependent and independent variable, because the condition or the nature is composite, it is extremely difficult to separate these out intervening variables. Now, what are those? For example, abstract. They are abstract in nature, especially in educational and social kind of research work. You should be very, very cautious. It is because there the controlling becomes little tough. Whereas in science research, controlling is always in the hands of the investigator. Whereas in social research, it is the human behavior which is so much composite and complex, right? So you will have to understand what are these intervening variables, and as far as possible know them, and as far as possible have a cognition of them, like confounding variables. So intervening variables comes in between the effect and the cause. Abstract variables in educational and social experiments which intervene the effect of experimental or criteria variable. Criteria variable here is water and growth. For example, I'm just giving you example. So anything coming in between or intervening them, you should either it is a confounding or an abstract entity. You should be. They are hard to know, but over a period of time, you will have to give a margin or a weightage or a reason because of the intervening variable. I am not able to very clearly tell you, but however there is a difference. That is how you will have to discuss. They are hard, if not possible, to observe because they usually have to do with the individual's feelings, like boredom, stress, fatigue, excitement. Very important, always existent, intertwined, but they could be highly diluting or highly intervening in the experiment that you are conducting. So intervening variable generally comes in between dependent and independent variable. The last one is called extraneous variable. Extraneous variable is like I told you now. For example, water and plant, soils, the type of the quality of seed, the fertility factors, the humidity, the temperature, all these things become extraneous. They are not considered, they are not studied, it is not our purpose, but they are existing. They are called extraneous variables. So we have to be guarded, very guarded about confounding, intervening, and extraneous variables if we want to really quantify and have a kind of what is called measurable difference between the cause and the effect in research. So these are the 5 variables that you need to very carefully, very clearly delineate and discuss very clearly in your course of research work. Extremely important. Many people do not do this, but then if you start doing from the beginning, you will have a complete grip and it will ease you. It will give a lot of kind of leverage to you so that everything becomes very, very clear to you. Now, some more thing about
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you please explain the last variable again, sir? Extraneous.
I will give you example. You will understand. Just yes. It is coming. It will come.
Okay. Sir.
If I give you example, it becomes very clear to you, sir. I have not given any example.
Okay.
Just for discussion, I gave water and plant, but I give you specific examples. Then you will understand the difference between confounding, intervening, extraneous variables.
Thank you, sir.
Now, independent variable is experimental and dependent variable is criteria variable. Dependent is the effect, outcome, result, and independent variable is that variable which is under the control of the investigator or the researcher that we have already told. So here, you see the variable whose effect is going to be known, that is independent. If one variable depends or the consequence of the other, then it is termed dependent. Same thing, I am just reiterating. Controlled by investigator, not controlled by investigator. Dependent is not controlled by investigator. Many people say doctors cure the disease. Impossible. Doctor can only prescribe medicine, right? Medicine have some effect and has a curing level, right? So doctor has not, you cannot give you health, right? Health is an outcome. But he can make you to get that outcome, but he is not responsible for it, right? So you should understand that particular fact. The independent variables vary at a known rate because you are controlling it, investigator is controlling it, and when you depict in a graph, it will be put on x-axis. X-axis will always contain, for example, my example of water and growth. Water will be in x-axis, growth will be in y-axis. That is how we represent when we do our results chapter. That is how we represent. So generally the x-axis will have the independent variable which is under the control of the investigator, and y-axis is the result or the consequence that you get. That is a convention. That we generally use in our research work. Now a small example is, for example, this is not limited. I'm giving you more examples, specific examples a little later. But now it is enough for you to understand dependent and independent variable. Amount of water, so which is under the control of investigator, so it is independent variable, and growth is the result of the consequence. Mental state, you can always control your mental state. It is possible. It is possible by indirect means, right? If I say, please don't think, I will not say close your eyes, So by some manipulation and concentration or something, there is a chance that mental state can be manipulated of the human being, and that is what you are going to study. That is the result is the stress. In other words, stress is dependent on your mental state. Motivation is dependent on the promotion. Motivation can also be dependent on the salary that you get. Motivation can also be dependent on the teacher who is teaching good in a better manner. If your teacher is very good, then you can be motivated to study more, right? Motivation is also possible if you get more marks in a particular subject. In a particular subject, you get more marks, generally you get motivated. This kind of relationship between dependent and independent variable is extremely important, and that is what is the central core of all research. Right? Now, specifically, I give you example now on a confounding variable. Reiterating what we have learned, it might influence the dependent variable, but that is having a direct effect on the outcome or the result, whose effect may be confused with the effects of the independent variable. So it is necessary for us to have a caution, have a tab, have a complete control over this confounding variable. Now, for example, the activity level, say for example, it is always human activity level. Let us take an example. You can walk, you can rest, is it not activity level can be anything. You can always be in the couch, you can always be in the exercise mode, you can always, so activity level. Physical activity level, if we take it as independent variable, which is under the control of yourself or researcher, which is the cause, the effect could be the gaining of weight. So gaining of weight is dependent on the activity level. So it is easy to understand. The gaining of weight becomes independent, activity level becomes independent. But what is confusing? The confusing is the age, is it not? So age is also confusing. Even though you suppose the activity level of, say, a person who is 90 years old, he will not be, even though he exercises for 1 hour, right? The gaining of weight may not be possible. So age is having a direct influence on the dependent variable, right? But we need to cognize. So in other words, we need to control. In other words, we need to make, whenever we study activity level and gain of weight, for example, you will have to keep this age in your mind, see that it will not have effect. Control that particular age, or in other words, homogenize the sample. Suppose 10 people exercising, 10 people, and you follow this level of exercise in gaining of the weight for some time. These 10 people age selection of these 10 people, their age becomes very critical. They are got to be of same age group. You cannot have a mixed age group because age will have a confounding effect on the study that you do. So this is called confounding variable. Confounding variable are very dangerous variables, very important for you to cognize and make it uniform. This is what we say in research, matching of samples. Matching means have as much matching closely as possible, have different individuals, because question of statistics is always sampling, is it not? Sample should be more, not one, right? So you will have to have that uniformity, homogeneity. So age becomes a confounding variable, especially with activity level and gaining of weight when you study. And so confounding variables are important to cognize, to recognize. Now the next example is intervening variable. Now intervening variable generally comes in between. It is a mediating variable, right? Stands in between dependent and independent variable, and generally it cannot be measured. Generally it cannot be measured. So the knowledge of it becomes extremely critical. Now what is the example? Suppose workforce diversity is the independent variable that you are controlling for knowing the organizational effectiveness. So organizational effectiveness is dependent on workforce diversity, right? This is a good logic. Organization, if an organization has to be effective, workforce diversity becomes necessary. That is what is your actually you are going to test. You are going to, that is what is your intention. But the intervening variable here is, for example, you see the creative synergy, because that is altering with every individual creative synergy, creative. This one is, for example, let us say individually they say every individual is excellent, but in a group it is not that excellence. Excellence gets completely smothered. Why? Because of the synergy that develops. See, many people say online classes are effective. There is no need that we need to invest on buildings and teachers infrastructure, right? But creative synergy can be positive also. In a group, the learning can be faster. In a face-to-face interaction, learning can be more effective. That becomes a actual intervening variable if in research, which can be positive, which can be negative, but we need to cognize it. That comes always in between, always between the independent and dependent variable. So you will have to normalize, homogenize that creative energy as well, which is tough. But as much as possible, we need to put our efforts to normalize it. If we want to have quantity difference between dependent and independent variable, when you change the quantity of independent variable, the change in effectiveness should be studied, visible, perceptive. It should come under perception and it is quantifiable. So if you want to make that, you will have to give a more important to the possible intervening variables. That is what is intervening variable here. Another example, knowledge of smoking, always under your control. 1 cigarette, 2 cigarette, 1 BD, 2 cigarettes, 2, 3, cigars. It is possible to change them, right? So it is under the control of the investigator. So it is independent variable. Smoking habit is what is the result finally, right? Smoking habit, how it develops, that is what is actually the outcome. So smoking habit, if you are studying, the knowledge of smoking also becomes the independent variable. Now here, the important intervening variable is attitude towards life. You see, which is an abstract thing, but it's an integral thing, because even knowledge of smoking and smoking habits, you have clearly delineated as the independent and dependent variable. Attitudes always will be having its in-between activity. People who are hardcore smokers will have an attitude that after all, death is certain. So why not? That kind of attitude. The other way, it is first you burn the cigarette, then the cigarette burns you, is also a kind of attitude, right? See, these are very subtle points, very abstract points, which will come in the way of your actual dependent and independent variable in between, and that has got to be given weightage, that has got to be cognized. So intervening variables come in between. Another example of intervening variable, intelligence and earning potential. So intelligence can always be, manipulated. For example, the person's IQ level is a differential, is a variable. So you can take IQs of different IQ people as the sample here, and you will test. You will also understand by interviews and by their paychecks what is their earning potential. Dependent variable. You can study. Very clearly. We can put up this dependent variable, independent variable. Now, what is difficult to study and always exists is the academic achievement. Academic achievement generally, may be positively correlated with both intelligence as well as earning potential, right? So it comes in between. So academic achievement has to be, cognized. It comes in between when we are discussing about the dependent and independent variable. So it is important for us to cognize them and also give weightage. You can't eliminate them because they are there. They are not seen, but they are always there. Is it little clear, sir, now? Hello, somebody asked question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this is a beautiful example to tell you, summarize the actual variables, extraneous variables, external variables, apart from what you have selected, dependent and independent variable. Now, dependent variable is the plant or the growth of the plant is the dependent variable. Independent variable, which is in the hand of the investigator, is the water, amount of water. Very easy, dependent and independent, and growth either by inches or centimeter, you can go on study. Now, what are the extraneous variables? Quality of seed, atmosphere, soil, fertilizer, they are all extraneous. External to what you have chosen, but present. So it is important to keep, if you want to study the effect of amount of water on growth, you will have to duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate, have plenty of samples, pots, sow the seed, if possible, same weight of the seed, same dimensions, morphologically, anatomically possible. So normalize these extraneous variable so that you are maximizing the effect of dependent and independent variable directly. So extraneous variables are not considered variables. They will be playing. They will have got to be, their effect should be nullified. Their effect should be minimal. That is what is the, in other words, bias should be as much minimal as possible in research if we have to bring out the fact in the real clear perspective. In the clear perspective, if you want to talk confidently and also make the research repeatedly same, repetition, reproducibility, accuracy, all those things, if you want to same, you will have to keep these subtle points in, especially variables, very, very, very clear and specific. So extraneous variables, the last type of variable are those variables which are existing. They are also independent variables by themselves. You can study it a little later, but as of now, they are not, you have not taken that as the objective, which are not related to the purpose of the study, that is the objective of the study, but may affect the dependent variable. You should be guarded. I think that is the, so variables are always, the variables the researcher wants to control so that they do not influence the outcome of the study. That is what is extraneous variable. Confounding, intervening, extraneous variables are generally confusing variables, generally abstract. To a large extent, they can be controlled. If not controlled, they can be under check, provided you cognize them, provided you give weightage to them, provided you do not ignore them. That is what is important. Now, after having learned a bit about variables. Now we go straight to the hypothesis.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can we please just go back for a moment to the difference between independent and dependent variables?
Yes, sir.
The difference sheet where you had shown the difference between both of them. Yeah, this one. I just wanted to make a note of the last point.
Okay, I'm giving you, sir. I'm giving you slides. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I'm
Thank
giving
you.
you slides. I will definitely give you slides. What is important for you to note down is what is not present, what I am trying to explain. If it is not present in the slide, only make the notes of that. All these slides I'm going to share with you entirely as it is.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Hypothesis. Actually, the research work officially starts from now. All these things are essential fundamentals either to have learned. Hypothesis is, I should say, the first. Actually, it is the third or fourth stage actually in scientific methodology, as we have seen in the beginning. But hypothesis will be the first exercise prelude to your problem statement. Hypothesis is one chapter, objectives is another chapter. I have just clubbed here, but they are different. Now, what is hypothesis? We will learn about the characteristics of hypothesis, importance of hypothesis, functions of hypothesis, what should be the checklist for a good hypothesis formulation, and also talk about examples. Then we move on to the next chapter, that is objectives. They are not much different, but it is easy. It will be logical if you understand hypothesis so that objectives can be drawn from hypothesis. Many people confuse hypothesis and objective. Many people do not have a clear idea. I'm not telling you, people will not be having clarity wouldn't be there. And that is the reason why hypothesis becomes very tough for many people to write. So, my only request to all of you, very sincere request to all of you is take the inputs of hypothesis, theoretical inputs of hypothesis, what I am going to tell you. But as an assignment, please write down, formulate your own hypothesis of your study, which will be easier and helpful for you. Now, that is soon after this, maybe up to next Saturday, if you have finished your hypothesis, building up, extremely it will be easy and useful to you. Now let us learn one by one, what is hypothesis. There are two kinds of hypothesis you should need to know, that also we will discuss. H0 is what is described as null hypothesis. HA is alternate hypothesis. Both go hand in hand. So in mathematically what is told is, if you want to prove certain things, you have to presume certain things. If you want to prove, you will have to predict. So that prediction is the exercise or the central core of hypothesis. But that prediction is not a wild prediction or an unengineered prediction. It has to stand some logics. So logical prediction or guesswork becomes extremely important. And whenever there is some logic built in, there is always a necessity of knowledge. Whenever there is a necessity of knowledge, there is a necessity of reviewing the literature. So that is what is the logic. Hypothesis therefore becomes complex and very important if you want to build in some logic to predict certain thing. Right? That is how hypothesis develops. So it is not a sudden occurrence of hypothesis. It is always an evolutionary aspect small things, build up and you crystallize it. So hypothesis is not just a sudden happening. It has got to be developed. It has got to be formulated. So whenever we use the word formulation, there is always ingredients of different nature, and we will have to bring these ingredients for the formulation, right? If a cough syrup is called a formulation, it is not just the water, it is not just the sugar, it is not just the active ingredient, it is not just the flavor, it is not just the color. All the things have got to be put in a particular measure so that formulation will be effective for you. That is what is called hypothesis. So hypothesis, although it appears very simple, it needs a lot of what's called education and knowledge. That is what is my point. Now let us see the meaning of hypothesis, and then we will try to go a little deeper on hypothesis. Hypo means, stimulus, boost, augmentation, increment. Thesis is a proposition stated or put forward for consideration. In other words, hypothesis is always a proposal. You propose to do, you choose to do, you intend to do, right? That kind of a connotation is hypothesis, which will make you, it has a stimulus, it has a thesis, right? These are the component. That is the meaning actually. Hypothesis is generally a conjecture or a prediction or a logical guess, but it is provisional. Please understand, at this point in time in research, there are no results, there are no findings, there is no data, there is no sample, there is nothing. What is available is just the knowledge about that particular problem or that particular area. You are going on gathering certain information. And from the information you guess a logic, you bring out a logic, right? So in other words, it is like, the butter that is in the mixture of that liquid. You will have to churn to bring that solidified to float it. The churning is important, but it is there. The churning is the process, but the fact that it comes out of churning, the result coming out of churning is what is called hypothesis. So in hypothesis, actually stimulates. There is a stimulation that is needed for you to, propose. Now, another thing, very important thing is, in research, we say you will have to market your idea. Very important. Now, what is marketing your idea? Idea is something, you know that it works, you are convinced that it works, you propose to sell it so that you get assistance to work and prove it. This is another concept of hypothesis. So hypothesis, in other words, in marketing terminology, is a selling idea that should sell. For that, it must be convincing to the buyer so that he can either invest money to take it because he feels there is use in that if he purchases. Please understand, this is extremely important. A hypothesis-driven research gets always funded. If your hypothesis is strong, there is no problem for the funding of or the money that is needed for you to continue your research, so that people are very happy about the idea, they are convinced of the idea. So all the principles of marketing will come in hypothesis formulation. All the principles of marketing, unless the person, in other words, it is an idea, it is always a statement, it is always a proposal, it is always a presentation. In other words, you are going to sell it because you are having that idea, you will have to sell to others and you will have to get money for proving that idea little later, proving that idea was correct, idea was fruitful, idea was profitable. All these things are embedded in hypothesis, right? So you have to understand, hypothesis statement is essential, because if you want to make an entity sellable, it has to have some values, it has to have some kind of usefulness. it is sellable. That is extremely important. So hypothesis has that greatness. It's a suggested solution to a problem. As of now, at this point in time, it is a suggested solution, but over a period of time, that suggestion goes away and it becomes a solution. Once you prove the suggestion was correct, the suggested thing goes away, solution is always becomes evident. That is, butter becomes floating in the liquid, right? That floating is crystallization. As of now, you know that the buttermilk has butter, right? That is important. So we don't know. I am really very thrilled to say now, impress upon you that hypothesis becomes extremely important because it is a starting point where you are telling the idea to somebody else. So the somebody else gets a thrill out of it, gets a stimulus out of it. That thrill, when you see, gives a thrill to you, motivates to you, and stimulates you to do research. So it is a mutual kind of thrill, mutual kind of stimulation that you are going to experience. So it is a suggested solution to a problem. It can appear very simple here, but if you want to suggest something, you will have got to have little more knowledge, little in a advantageous position of teaching, so that that potential difference can be transferred to student. So that comes by knowledge and reviewing of literature. So it is a suggested solution. You are going to give a solution to the problem in a I should say non-experimental manner. It is foretelling with some logics. It is predicting with some logics. Must be testable. So the ingredient of hypothesis is that what solution you are going to give, it should be testable, so that others also get the same experience as you professed or as you prophesized, right? So that is must be testable. Sometimes written, if you want to write the statement, if there is supply of water, then there is growth of plant. That is a hypothesis statement. Statement is always affirmative. Statement is always a sentence. Statement is always a thing which you proclaim. State means tell others, right? Now, why should we tell others? Why a statement should be told others? I tell you when we come to the problem statement later. But please understand, there is a meaning in that particular statement. Statement is tell others. That is extremely important. Don't keep it with you, right? See, marketing, you can't market any commodity yourself, is it not? You will have to sell to somebody else, right? So for that, there is always a skill and attitude and also knowledge that is needed, right? So it is extremely important. But when you write it in statement form, you can use the word if, blah, 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 then, blah, blah, blah. That is how you can start in the beginning, learn if and then. Fill up the blanks, then you are coming at a conclusion. You are coming at a hypothesis statement. Predicts an outcome, predicts a result, predicts an effect. That is what is. So prediction is important, but effect is so sellable. Effect is so needed, so necessary. How do we define hypothesis? Hypothesis are predictions about the relationship among two or more variables or groups of variables based on a theory or a previous work that has been done. So there is a basis of somebody working and you are predicting something new basing on that. So please understand here, this is what humbles every researcher. Researcher cannot be a person made by himself. He will have to understand others, understand other concepts or related concepts to give his own concept. It is the humbling down here. A researcher is not an independent person. Please understand. Researcher cannot be alone. He is not a loner. He is in association with so many articles of so many people's efforts, and he learns about them, and then something comes out of his own, which will go on adding to that bulk of knowledge. So it is humbling down here. So please understand, philosophically humbling down. That is why you get PhD. Philosophical things you will get it. Something intangible you get it. Something which is which is immeasurable that you get it. So it is two or more variables grows based on previous research. Previous research becomes the basis, foundation. Generally unseen, but what you build on them is your own. Hypotheses or assumptions or theories that the researcher makes and tests. So for testing, one has to make, is it not? So many people forget about this making. They think testing is their right. No, it is impossible. If you make yourself and test yourself, then you are the author of that particular idea. That is extremely important. If you test somebody else's, you get the knowledge. But if you make your own idea and test it, you become a researcher. So that is the difference between researcher who is also having a lot of knowledge, right? So it is extremely important. You will have to make yourself, and you will have to test yourself. You will have to convince yourself. You will have to experiment yourself. Here, self is more. Research supervisor is just an element who can tell you, yes, possible, you move in this direction, possibly you will get it because of experience. But he is not the creator. Creator is yourself. You are the creator of your own idea. You are the creator and also substantiator and also supporter of your own findings, right? That is also embedded in hypothesis. Hypotheses are more specific predictions. Specific prediction is necessary because you will have to single out and understand. In a complete rope, please understand there are multitude of strands, right? Rope has a particular effect. Rope is strong. Rope is binds something else. But the reason for rope is the strands in the rope, is it not? So each strand, if you want to pull out and understand, then the strength of each strand additive becomes a rope, right? But it is extremely important to pull out the strand and understand the nature of the strand. So if you want to really understand this analytical approach, breaking down into smaller things, then to understand synthetic, put every fiber and see the strength. Two strands can be one strength and 10 strands could be another strength, right? So hypotheses are specific predictions. They've got to be specific. Extremely important is that pulling strand, specificity, making in convergence, pointed, you see, is extremely important. Please understand the picture of funnel. Now we are at the end of the mouth of the funnel. But if you want to come to the stem, you will have to eliminate certain things and point out certain specific things. Then that specific things becomes more clear to you. In other words, seeing becomes observing. What you see in the beginning may not be true, but now you are studying each one of it so that you will get a full idea of what is called generalizability little later. So from the mouth, you have to trickle down to the stem. You have to come convergence. That is what is called specific prediction. Specific prediction about the nature and direction. It cannot be general prediction. General prediction is what astrologers will say, right? So it is specific prediction about the nature and direction of the relationship between two variables. It is all with variables, how strongly, closely, loosely, very tightly related. That's what you are going to, predict in hypothesis formulation. It is less general than theory. Theory is always extrapolatable, generalizable, but it is less than that theory because it has got to be tested and then make a theory. So it is less general. Theories and hypotheses describe causal relationships between two or more variables. Again, it is variables testing. So we have independent, dependent variable, out of which you will formulate a hypothesis statement. It should be, as I told you, as specific as possible, so that a clear relationship between variables you will bring out. Example, a person's vote is related to the place of residences. Suppose voting booth is near to your house, you are more likely to vote, right? You are more likely to, that's a statement. If the voting booth is far away, that far away distance becomes a variable. Distance becomes a variable and you can always study it and come to some prediction. If the booth is very far from your house, less, your vote may be less probability. Better, see, that is a general thing. Better, more specific thing is Indian urban voters are more likely to vote BJP than our rural voters. You see, out of experience, so many studies have come, so many things have come. So reviewing of literature, knowledge will give you that BJP is a party predominantly of urban voters. You know, in other words, you have predicted, it can be tested. All the, see, hypothesis must be testable. The very quality of hypothesis is testable. But at this point in time, I am making a conjecture. I am predicting Indian urban voters are more likely to vote BJP than our rural voters. In other words, you can convert this statement into a research question also. What is research question? Whether urban voters prefer BJP. Whether urban citizen, urban persons like BJP, prefer BJP, can be question. So research question and research statement, they are different. One is question form, the other one is statement form. But not what we are talking now is research statement form, that is hypothesis. It should be more specific so that everything can be tested. Still better, another better example is American voters with higher income. See, I am adding variables. If you see, American voters, that is voters of America, with more income are more likely to vote Republican than our voters with lower income. Okay, so you can also tell lower income example Democratic Party, you know, so that you can always test. Testing is possible with more specificity. So in hypothesis building, that is by step you should go. Step by step, add on more variables, add on more logics, and going on stitch experiments to test each variable or couple of variables in experimental form. This is how hypothesis can be brick by brick built. Generally, this is a very important thing. Many people do not know. Many people make what is called post hoc hypothesis. After doing the experiment, they will predict. Just because the researcher or the research supervisor did not give you marks, because there is no hypothesis stage at all. Hypothesis is not written at all. Because of the less marks, you predict little data. No. In research work, hypothesis has got to be done before the study. It's a prediction before the actual study. That is why it is a conjecture, not, you know, framing the hypothesis. It is not framing the hypothesis. Frame is a bad word. No, framing is something which is concocted, which is something not as good as formulation. So formulation hypothesis is important. Formulation is always in the beginning, in the mental way. It is at the mental level. Then the action comes. Many people, because hypothesis is insisted, what is your hypothesis if I ask you? It is insisted as a viva question. Then you start telling, what result you got into a kind of statement. That is a bad, it's actually a misconduct in research. Please understand, each researcher have to first hypothesize and move forward, not experiment and frame the hypothesis. Prediction, which is before the study commences. So there is a chronology, and the chronology is always in the beginning. Hypothesis always should be in the beginning before you set your hands. It is setting the mind here. Setting the hands is later. Setting the hand means experimentation. Setting the mind is thinking, right? So thinking has to happen first. If you do not think and leap, then that leap can be sometimes kill you, dangerous, and also wound you, right? So hypothesis is dangerous if you do after the study. It is should be never be done because of your own safety. Researchers' tentative prediction. The tentativeness will go away. Prediction also will go away. Then the actual finding will come. So this tentative prediction becomes almost a finding later. Finding becomes truth. Truth becomes a reality. All those things little later. Right? It is not a wild guess, but it is a calculated, logical kind of what's called guess, prediction. Leads to a greater amount of knowledge, gives you a lot of knowledge, books and books, theorems and theorems, theories and theories can be developed out of that, gives great amount of knowledge. Hypothesis helps to translate the research problem and objective into a clear explanation or prediction of the expected results or outcomes of the study. So you get, it is like, the end should be having a mental picture for the means, is it not? So end should have some kind of where you want to go, how it is, how beautiful it is, how nice it is, those things you are going to explain in hypothesis. So expected results, you have not got results, it is expected results, but you can touch, create, or experience those results by real designing of experiments, which we discussed little later. Three important parts. As a checklist, you can always take this if you want to build your hypothesis. First is the independent variable delineation would be there. Part of the experiment that is purposefully changed. Purposefully water amount is changed for understanding the growth of the plant. It is deliberately done. That manipulable variable, manipulation is possible because it is in the hands of the researchers. So if you want to write it, it begins with the word if. If the amount of water is 100 ml, then the growth is 1 centimeter. That is a beautiful hypothesis. If the children get at least 8 hours of sleep, then the next step is dependent variable. Part of the experiment, that is predicted effect, begins with then. Then the children will perform better on tests. Now the third part is also very important. That is the explanation. You have given the result and you are giving an explanation in short form, thoughtful explanation as why predicted effect will occur, begins with because. So consequence have got to be explained, not just ending with consequence, right? It is not a cut statement. It is a holistic statement because rest lets the children's body heal and refresh. So that is the reason that you attribute for the prediction, the children getting 8 hours of sleep, better performance. Because why? Because they get a rest for the body so that healing happens and refreshment can be resulted. So this is how the hypothesis parts have got to be tested. So when you write and formulate, tell about independent variable, tell about dependent variable, shortly explain why that cause and effect has happened. If you do this, then your hypothesis is strong. You are in the right path of formulating hypothesis. If so and so, then so and so, due to so and so, right? Is it clear? It becomes simple for you if you follow this sequence. Now, that is the introduction and nature of hypothesis, meaning and also definition we have done. Now we will go to the kinds of hypothesis, how to proceed hypothesis. There are two hypotheses which you need to remember. One is called null hypothesis. Null means no. Here your point is always negation, always telling that growth is not dependent on water. is the null hypothesis. With that premise, you study the work, you put up the experiment. Premise becomes a motivator. Premise becomes a reason. Premise becomes a stimulation. So null hypothesis is essential. And by testing, when you test the hypothesis, you will get an alternate hypothesis. What you told, water was not responsible for plant growth, that you may change to alternate hypothesis, HA, no, water is essential for growth, right? But water is essential for growth was the result of understanding that water was not essential for growth. So this negation becomes extremely important. That is why the greatness of null hypothesis. You start hypothesis with no, so that you can put such design of experiments to disprove it. Generally, null hypothesis have got to be disproved generally, right? Generally. So hypothesis, null hypothesis means is a form of hypothesis that deemed to be true until proven wrong. Until proven wrong based on experimental data. See, there is a famous hypothesis called in toxicology. I remember that there is one famous person called Paracelsus. He gave a law telling that all the materials, that is physical materials on earth, are poisons unless you prove otherwise. See, this is what is null hypothesis, classical example. All are poisons, which is so much a fact, and he is the father of toxicology. All the elements, all the materials, especially physical materials that we consume, are poisonous, he says, unless you prove it otherwise. Unless you prove it, that means proof becomes important. Telling that statement wrong becomes important. That is what the null hypothesis statement, right? Even water is a poison. For the if I say water is a poison, many people do not may not appreciate, right? So in the body, see that toxicology is nothing but science of poisons. In the body, in which portal entry the water has to be put is extremely important. If you put about 1 liter of water in the mouth, it may not kill you. But if you put even 0.5 ml of water in the nose, it can kill you. Portal entry, right? You understand? See, what a beautiful statement that Paracelsus has made. So portal entry becomes determinant, and the motivation to understand water is a poison, prove that water is a poison, is also important, is also a kind of research. That is how the knowledge developed. That is how all science and engineering and also social research has developed, by questioning and telling some wrong things in the beginning and proving that they are wrong later. More thing about na, no. Like for example, null hypothesis is a statement of nothingness or absence in words, and it's always stated negative, no change, no effect, no change. If you tell more, then you yourself at some point in time say how it is no, why it is no. If you do that, then you have tested the hypothesis. For example, what is happening? Absolutely nothing, no difference, no change, no effect. Null hypothesis is always telling no. Null means no. For example, light, color, that is the nature of light, has no effect on the plant growth, right? But the science has shown otherwise. The light of certain frequency, certain intensity has a trigger effect on the plant. That is an alternate hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis: the color of the light affects the plant growth. By testing in a control study, you have come to this conclusion or fact or consequence that it is not just the light, right, of certain frequency, certain amplitude, certain intensity, certain nature of the color, is important. So that is how null hypothesis stimulates to get the right answer. That is the greatness of null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is a hypothesis that says There is no statistical significance between the two variables in the hypothesis. They are same. Age has no effect on mathematical ability, but you can prove otherwise. Mathematical ability is always dependent on the age factor, right? So mathematical ability is dependent variable, age is an independent variable, right? In other words, assume a treatment that has no effect and then write your hypothesis. So null hypothesis is rather easy to write, but you write alternate hypothesis, then say no for it, then it becomes null hypothesis. So alternate hypothesis is always post experimentation, what you really observe, which is contrary or contradictory to the null hypothesis. Null hypothesis. It's a position that states something is happening, a new theory is preferred instead of an old one, null hypothesis. Null hypothesis in the beginning, but you will definitely disprove it and give an alternate hypothesis which is little departing or totally departing from null hypothesis. For example, application of biofertilizer X increases the plant growth is the finding that you got, but what was the null hypothesis in the beginning? Any application, any fertilizer, anything has no effect on plant's growth. That is how you start up. Very fundamental. Now, coming to importance of hypothesis, it directs our observation, gives a direction to our observation, focus to observations, identifies the variables, describes a relationship, refers to population, refers to the sample. Extremely important. So that is why hypothesis building, hypothesis formulation is important and necessary. Now, what is hypothesis generation? Why it is important? It is important for many reasons, because it is an educated guess, not a wild guess, not a foretelling. It has a lot of basis for that particular guess about the source and the cause. For example, disease break. Generating hypothesis enables the investigators to test these hypotheses in an analytical manner, study. The success of the investigation depends upon the quality of hypothesis. In other words, if you get funding for your research, then you have sold your idea well. You have become a good marketing person. Extremely important. So, my dear friends, please sell your ideas so that they get some money, research grants, so that you will do a better quality experiment. That is extremely important. For that, you will have to study hard. You will have to see what has been done in the past, do a very scientific, very systematic, rigorous reviewing of literature. No conjecture is possible without the study that has been already done in the strand or in this research problem that you are going to choose. So extremely important is, if you do a good hypothesis, there should be no reason why your proposal can be rejected. So test yourself that it is sellable. Test yourself that your idea is marketable. Now, some checklist of the lakshanas of good hypothesis. First and the foremost is testable situation. Should give direction to your research. What are the variables of importance that you have considered and going to test? Very well grounded in theory are the facts that has been in vogue, that has been established already. It is brief. It is always a single paragraph without no two paragraphs in hypothesis, always single paragraph. The dependent, independent variable and explanation. These are the three important components. It is brief with very clear clarity. So check whether your hypothesis formulation after writing is testing with these criteria. Then it will be a good hypothesis. Derives from research question, as I told you. I'm just giving a small example. What is the relationship between test anxiety and performance on a complex cognitive tests? Now, what you want to find out here is actually question, what is the relationship between test anxiety and performance on a complex cognitive tests? So you are talking about why people are anxious and how this anxiety, has an effect on the performance. That is what is the question. But the same thing can be written in statement, and the statement looks like this, or hypothetical statement looks like this. Performance on complex cognitive tests will be an inverted U-shaped function of the level of anxiety. In other words, if the anxiety increases, the level of performance comes down. See how logically you have converted the question into a statement, and all these things are possible to test. You can fix up or test the task, you can measure the anxiety and see how anxieties behave with the test, and also the performance in terms of marks, in terms of some kind of delineated criteria you can test. This is possible. Here this slide proves you that research question is a precursor to hypothesis. But hypothesis gives you a lot of information. Hypothesis is possible only when you have studied well, when you have done a lot of reviewing of literature. You know what is what words that you should use, and it also tells you some kind of explains you why it happens. Explains you why it happens, so that it can be tested either affirmative or to some extent sometimes possible. Sometimes it may not be. It may not be true also. So testing of, there is a possibility of testing little later, but the possibility of test should always be an integral thing in hypothesis. It has got to be tested, and it has got to be in outwardly convincing. It must be convincing. Definitely, students are in anxiety they make a lot of mistake even though they have studied. Is it that? So many of us will feel after coming out of the examination, my God, I left. I knew it. I was so nice. It came to my tongue tip, but I could not tell. Those things will happen. So that the reality is real. The performance is definitely based on the anxiety, and so the later on development of how to reduce the anxiety, all those things you can think of removing that, so that performance becomes optimal, right? So that is how research question and hypothesis are differentiated. The last possible slides in hypothesis is that, you see, it suggests the relationship nature, gives the nature of the sample that you have selected or to be tested, and it is free from methodological detail. You have never put any method. If you put method, then it becomes an experiment, right? Procedure, it becomes an experiment. That is not the intention. Here, you will predict certain things, and actual data to support or not support that comes little later. That is what is hypothesis. Make sure you provide a rationale, that is explanation to hypothesis, extremely important. The third part is important. How you have predicted the relationship between dependent and independent variable, why it happens, some kind of, if not concrete, some explanation is extremely important. Otherwise it is incomplete. Provide alternative possibilities for hypothesis that could be tested. Why did you choose the ones you did others? For this, the reviewing of literature is the basis. So without reviewing of literature of the area in which you want to work, it is impossible for you to, set your both mind and hand to writing hypothesis. Normally, no more than 3 primary hypotheses should be proposed in the research study. Why we say 3 hypotheses? Generally, conventionally, not necessary. Many hypotheses you can put, but then PhD is a 3-year term. 3-year means 1 year, 1 objective, because 1 objective can be holistically, comprehensively, formulated into design of experiments, collection of data points, drilling the data points, or exercising the data points to get some findings and discussing them. It takes time. So generally 3 hypotheses, 3 primary hypotheses. Many sub-hypotheses are possible for each hypothesis. So research is nothing but going on, predicting, testing, predicting, testing. In the way, in the process, you get a lot of newer findings, newer things. That is what is creation of knowledge. A proposal that is hypothesis driven is always mostly likely to be funded than a fishing expedition or a primary descriptive study. So even primary descriptive studies, if it is hypothesis driven, you can make it a more colorful, more meaningful, more clear and specific explanations and theories little data. That is the nature and the deliberation on hypothesis. Now, in the last leg of our sorry, let us see one or two examples. Should I stop at this? Somebody will tell me, or should we? It takes about 10 more minutes.
No, sir. Please tell the examples, sir.
Okay. We will finish after the examples.
Sir,
Right?
please continue. Take as much time, sir. We would rather have to understanding, a good understanding, sir.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay. Then we will go. Then I'm so happy. Thank you. Now let us see how to develop hypothesis. How in the beginning make certain sentences and build into a good logical thing so that all the three parts of hypothesis can be completed. First example. Now, predict a possible answer to the problem or the question, right? Example, if soil temperatures rise, then plant growth will increase. Kindly, ladies and gentlemen, start with the simple things, if and then. If one variable, then another variable. Then means always dependent variable, if always independent variable. Soil temperature, you can always change, it is in the hands of the researcher. So if, then the consequence or the effect, growth comes, right? If you start with this, write about 20-25 such statements, you will be having a ground foundation, very well good foundation, so that you can develop into little complex one little later. So you start with the simple thing, if and then. Graduate students who read the text in research methods will score higher on their exams than graduate students who did not read their research methods text. This is not if and then method, little more explanation, but gives lot of good meaning. Now, graduate students who read the text in research method, that means if you are exposed to a course like research methodology, then you will be more successful in not just what research you have taken, but research you are going to undertake later also, after your PhD also, right? So in other words, research methodology course is essential. You can always prophesize or theorize that way. So research methodology becomes critical for a researcher, not only to conduct experiments of his or her own, but also to suggest somebody else's, but also to guide, but also to prescribe certain research proposals to others. That is what is also a hypothesis. So you can always test. Everything is testable. Example 1, very simple form, if and then. Example 2, generalistic statements which are explainable, which has complete logic, but amenable for testing. Now, another example. This is a classical example, very important. Please see how step by step the hypothesis develops. Now, treating wastewater in wastewater treatment plants will reduce pollution. So everybody can appreciate treating wastewater in wastewater plant definitely reduces pollution. It is convincing. However, there is hardly any specificity. Wastewater treatment is essential. Everybody know. Water is a resource. Everybody know. Water should be recoverable. Everybody know. Water is a scarce thing. So wastewater can be rectified and you can reuse that water. Everybody understands. It is more generalistic here. It's a generalized statement. However, it is testable. But somehow something can be more. It could be more made more specific, so that the statement becomes enriched. Statement becomes more meaningful. Statement becomes more explainable. Right. So that is what is there. It's a generalistic statement. Although all many lakshanas, many ingredients of hypothesis are present, it lacks specificity. What type of wastewater? Is it industrial wastewater? Is it sink water in the house? Is it toilet water? That is not. There is no specificity here. Is it a domestic waste? Is it an industrial effluent? It is the, so if you build that specificity, then the hypothesis gets enriched, right? So hypothesis could be generalistic, but preferably more specific to add on value. And that specificity that you add should also be testable, and they should have a rationale. Why you are making it specific also should be rational. Now, how to improvise this statement? It is not testable at this stage without further definitions. You will have to tell which type of wastewater. So you will have to guide the student. Although it is statement, but there is a guidance that is essential, right? So you will have to revise this and build in some specifics. You see the same statement, little explained. Treating wastewater entering a municipal wastewater treatment. So you can write the name of the plant also here. In Bangalore, it could be some Bangalore thing. In Kerala, it could be some other name of the plant. So plant, if you tell the name, you have delineated broad specificity, large amount of specificity to that. And large amount of inbuilt explanation also is there. If it is Bangalore municipal waste supply water, you know you're talking about Bangalore region. If it is Bangalore urban, it is more specific. Bangalore rural specific, right? So you write the name of the plant using two methods. See, you're also explaining, you're specifying as well as testing. Sedimentation and biological degradation will decrease the pollution. Although treating wastewater pollution reduction pollution is embedded, you have brought automatically some very important specific points in this. Municipal wastewater you have told, so no industry wastewater you are talking about. You have made it that very clear. You have made the name of the plant also, which is you have made second specificity, second more specific thing you have brought in. And you have delineated the method of treatment also, sedimentation and biological treatment, so that you know there is a logic. There is a logic, and that can also, you can adopt only sedimentation technique and biological degradation technique. That will decrease pollution also, you told. So you have explained and brought specificity to a particular concept or hypothesis statement. And now it is enriched, right? More specific. The water is identified, treatment methods are defined, but what is missing is perhaps testable with further details, but doesn't really address why of expected outcome. How you have told, sedimentation, biological treatment is how, that is the methods. Why it is decreasing, if you tell, then it becomes more specific, and that why also should be kind of explainable or testable. So if you put that why and how we have put now, if you put why, then possibly your hypothesis is specific, you explainable, testable. Now let us see how that comes. You see, little longish, no problem, but very, very specific, very testable. Treating wastewater, entering a municipal water plant, the name, through sedimentation, biological degradation, how, the methods, will decrease the what pollution? Lead pollution. Lead sorbed to particles, solid particles, through sedimentation, and amount of non-persistent polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons through biodegradation. You say how in the previous this one. Now you say which pollution is attacked by which method, right? Which method? Two levels, so that it is under the WHO regimen, WHO guideline. Everything is testable. Everything is so nicely explained. Yet it is brief. Now you can put battery of testing methods and prove what you have predicted as a hypothesis is holding good or not, right? So this is how stage by stage you can bring in lot of specificity, lot of meaning, and also see that everything is under your grip, under the grip of your researcher. Everything is grip. And deriving objectives out of this is so easy. It's a child's play now. Now, what are the objectives? You will sample the treatment. You will go to visit the treatment plant, bring the sample. You will adopt the method of sedimentation and method of biodegradation. If you adopt the method of sedimentation, you are delineating or you are attacking only the lead and the solid particle on which it is sorbed, it is absorbed, right? All those things are so clear, so clear. So your experimental design is very, very clear. One is the lead pollution, the other one is lead is chemical pollution, and biological degradation is polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons. Two pollutants in two different manners you are going to attack. You can write about 2 to 3 full pages explanation of the design of experiments, series of experiments, number of samples basing on this particular hypothesis. That is how the proposal is developed. That is how the proposal becomes enriched. Excuse me, my battery is running out. I will just. Yeah. So that is how the hypothesis has now lot of added value. Specifically states why the identified outcome is expected. But why is explained, how is explained, the intention is explained, and planning you can do it little later. Research design says that planning work. So hypothesis is really testable under all the defined and delineated conditions. That is how a good hypothesis can be evolved.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Should the hypothesis be only one sentence, or we can write it in 2 or 3 sentences, sir? Because
you can write many sentences, but should be a single paragraph.
Okay.
You can write many sentences. There is no limit for hypothesis length, but generally, ingredients are high, the dependent, independent, everything put in one sentence. Like how we write abstract of a research paper, sir.
Okay.
See, in research paper, 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs you can make in that abstract, but paragraphs are generally, it's a convention. That it should be a single paragraph, but sentences could be many sentences if possible. More sentences, afterwards you can epitomize. You can paraphrase it, but many sentences, if you write, it will be good.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now we talk about 2 classical hypotheses and see how the hypothesis behaved. One is the famous, Charles Darwin, British researcher, European researcher, who was called, evolution, father of evolutionary theory, which stood the test of time, and also ups and downs, lot of criticisms also came up, and finally, he developed a theory called origin of species. At that point in time, it was very revolutionary because, in Christianity, the evolutionary concepts were not there. It is something, there was a lot of kind of what is called dogmas and other things, but he tried to, bring in some scientific way of how evolution happens in nature. His hypothesis in the beginning was this: the fossil species of a particular region of the world resemble the living species in that same region. This needs a bit of explanation because there are many non-biologists in our group. The fossils, it is nothing but, explanation is nothing but, suppose you take Bangalore's map, a delineated area. Let us take, for example, Banashankari. In Banashankari delineated geographical location, if you dig the earth, you will get the fossils of those animals and plants which lived in Banashankari. That is what is the hypothesis. Very, very logical guess, right? So anybody will not dispute. In Banashankari, people who lived in Banashankari will be buried in Banashankari. Animals which lived in Banashankari will be lived buried in that particular place, and it is common to find the fossils or the remnants or the remaining things in a fossilized form in that area. So that is what he proposed in the beginning. So by studying the fossils, you can recreate the nature of the flora and fauna, that is plant and animal kingdom of that particular place. He was a natural biologist, and he tried to predict this, and this particular thing revolutionized, telling that in a particular area, if you want to historically find out the changes in skeleton or changes in certain species, you can test the fossils of that particular area. That is, dig underneath the ground. Underneath the ground, you will get some fossils, and those fossils tell you or give the history of that particular region. That is how things happen, and it was a revolution at that point in time. He observed wild animals and plants around the world and corresponded with a lot of domestic and animal breeders all over the Europe to know what is the shape and how that fossilization happens in akin to different regions and different areas, and what are those biomarkers or indicators that is to be tested. All those things he very in-depth studied and brought out this hypothesis. And it held good for a lot of things, but then there is a great problem with this hypothesis. Finally, he published what is called Origin of Species, reject the previous hypothesis. When he started, it was the origin of species. Then finally, he laid out the theory of evolution. Because the greatest problem is flaw in this particular hypothesis is in Banashankari. How we can say people from, say for example, Ranchi or Delhi also can come and live in Banashankari? Is it not? Some other race, some other area, some other geographical areas can come and live here. He never gave weightage for what is called this trans movement or across the continents, that hibernation, birds will move from one place to other place. In transnational things happen, and transnational things happen because they do not stick to one particular area all the lifetime. That he did not give weightage. That is how the Origin of Species failed. Although he published the Origin of Species, the theory that this one did not. But fortunately, to understand this change, that others are the other environmental effects, the other movement effects, transnational effects also have effect on the fossils, it took about 40 years. So when he started, it was one hypothesis. And finally, he laid out what is called theory of evolution, telling that over the course of generations, the organisms can change their inherited characteristics. This was the real reality that he changed. But it took almost about 20 to 25 years to come to this particular conclusion, right? So, hypothesis can be contextual. This is a great lesson we learned from Charles Darwin, and that is the reason why today's finding can be disproved little later. Today's finding is a finding but may not be a truth. Truth is always standing for long time, standing forever, right? So in research, although we want truth, the reality or the finding at present stage is always questionable. Philosophically, researcher should be skeptical in nature. This is what is called skeptics. Skeptics means you have the finding, you have the following, you have proved, but never be completely satisfied about the proof. Classical example. So when a finding wants to become the truth, matures into a truth, lot of time is needed. Lot of changes also are possible. Lot of minor, major alterations are also possible. So please understand, ladies and gentlemen, what we prove today may not be entirely true forever. Contextually, for some reason, for some years or decades, it may be true. It need not be true. That is the reason. That is actually the very nature or swabhava of research, it can change, but at that point in time it can, but there are certain things which have not changed at all. For example, theory of next one is Einstein did not experiment at all. In fact, he got Nobel Prize not for his theory of relativity, he got Nobel Prize for chemistry, electrochemistry. So why? Because in this case 8 years of work on theoretical mathematics and physics, he tried to bring two very peculiar variables called relationship between time and space. Extremely tough to conceive, extremely tough to work on, because there is nothing testable here, nothing testable. They are so abstract. They are entities, but they are very abstract. They are not under the grip of anybody because they are not physical in nature, like plants and animals, which you can touch and feel, like Darwin. But here it is time and space. Please understand, they are so relative. They are so kind of entities which are not actually, I should say, physical. They are metaphysical in nature, right? But he tried to bring in very convincingly relationship between the time and space, right? When he proved his theory of relativity, when he postulated this relationship between time and space, people appreciated but could not test. His hypothesis could not be tested, including himself. He could not test. The theory suggested hypotheses that were immediately verified. Some hypotheses are immediately verified. Other predictions were so far ahead that they waited about 50 years, half a century, before the technology allowed their testing. So the moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen, is hypothesis is a very, very magical exercise where many things we can prove then and there. Many things can be proved later also. But does that mean that whatever that is not provable, we can't say it is untrue, but we cannot say it is true also, right? That question is always there. So in our daily routine scientific work or daily routine social work, immediately solutions have to be found. Is it not engineering? So for solutions have to be found means need not stand for a long time, but solution we have got and comforts have already come, right? So there are certain fundamental scientists like Darwin, Newton hypothesis, who did not bother about applications, who did not bother about how far they were true, but they postulated anyway. But the moral and the actual basis of the truth is they hypothesized. Hypothesis drove them to do. Hypothesis gave the fuel to be motivated. Hypothesis made them completely engaged day and night through over the years. So that is the greatness of hypothesis. So we should not fail to hypothesize, right? Hypothesis may fail, but not failing to hypothesize is the rule, actually, is the rule. So last thing is, I am telling you, the last slide in hypothesis is the checklist. See whether in your hypothesis statement, dependent variable is deliberated, independent variable is there, relationship is there, explanation is there, what is the problem portion, what is the solution portion, what can be tested immediately with design of experiments. All those things, if you bring in, then you have written a beautiful statement. For example, let us take over 70% of Indian youth could be retained at their places of residences if villages are industrialized. That provides employment. It can make, it is also a generalistic statement, but that village you can make some village name, some, say for example, some village near Bangalore, or village name, if you can bring it, industry name you can bring it and make it more specific, test it and do the research and bring out your statement is true or false later. So dependent variable is employment generation, independent variable is industrialization, problem portion is unemployment, solution portion is industrialization, removes the unemployment or attacks or manages the unemployment. Experiment is a survey that how many employed youth are present post and previous industrialization of that particular place. So you can put this experiment, come to conclusion, write your observations, results, and then the solution telling that industrialization is one of the way to attack or manage employment becomes more concrete and more true. This is how hypothesis statements have to be made. That I request all of you is spend a lot of time. This is the right time. Never lose not making any hypothesis. Try to make a good hypothesis. It gives you a lot of boosting energy, stimulant energy to you to formulate your experiments. And I am sure good hypothesis, strong hypothesis, verify with people of experience whether hypothesis has all elements, because it is always good to vet with somebody else who has experienced. Your guides will definitely help you to make a strong hypothesis and move forward. I think I will stop at this today, and we will talk about objectives and problem statement. They are not objectives. After all, it doesn't give you any big problem. Within 10-15 minutes you can make. And problem statement is a serious chapter which we will cover in the next Saturday. If we have questions, I can take some questions. Else, we will meet on next Saturday and talk about objectives and problem statement in the next session. Any questions, please? If there is no questions, thank you. Thanks for attending the class. I wish everybody please be more regular in the class so that you will get a continued link. Else any session missing means you will lose lot of link. It will be difficult for anybody to catch up, right? So please make yourself sure that you will attend regularly, so that some useful inputs comes to you, and it becomes all that easy for you to do research work little later on. Never
Sir,
consider this as a
sir,
coursework. Yes, please.
Sir, which book to refer for this subject, sir? Any book?
There is one book for both science and social research. I will share that copy of that digital book also. Please remind me next
Okay,
time.
sir.
I will give the book also. You can read the book and come, so that I need not explain more. And that
Okay,
will
sir.
be a self-contained book. It is good book. You can use that.
Okay. Thank
I
you,
will
sir.
give you. I have an electronic copy. I will share with you, and also I will share the slides also to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Please share, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so
madam.
much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Meet you next.